Welcome back. You're listening to the discussion Innovation in Government, sponsored by Carasoft on Federal News Network. I'm your host, Jason Miller. My guest today is Kevin Brooks, the Principal Digital Strategist for DoD and U.S. Intelligence Community at ServiceNow. Kevin, before break, we were talking a lot about this employee engagement piece, how to ensure that they have some care and feeding and important things about employees. The other thing we hear time and again is the need for the change of the culture. And while that is a common refrain, I think in technology or not, this change in culture really leads us down a path of the experience side and what are employees experiencing, and then how does that relate to kind of what citizens are experiencing? And we have this whole UX CX discussion. How does that kind of bring it all together? Because agencies have to care about not just their citizens, but their employees and the experience that they're all having.
Yeah. So starting with the employees, so extending culture out through a digital platform can be as simple as, like we mentioned earlier, having the agency head do an all hands call on a platform like this and have all the folks chime in at the same time for an hour and listen to what he has to say about where we're going in the next 3 months and charting a path. It's something simple as that, or some of the technology tools we talked about earlier where your manager engages with you. But where I think the intersection of CX and EX comes in really is employees want to do a good job for the American citizens. They want to help fellow citizens. They want to have the tools to do that. So by elevating the EX and the CX simultaneously, you create a better project because they're actually inextricably linked. And I'll give you a couple examples. In the experience economy, the memories, emotions, and feelings that customers take away ultimately matter the most. So if your citizens are satisfied with the service and quality of service they got, your agency will have a much higher standing in their eyes, and therefore you'll have more popular support. And that's kind of the bottom line on that. But so a digital building block of CX will help with your employees' well-being because it comes to their feeling better about their job. Hey, I work for an agency that people like. If you can elevate the experience and get Americans to like the IRS, that would be a huge win. Imagine how employees of the IRS would feel if they were now beloved. Their morale would go up. CX also gives those employees the opportunity to feel more connected to the organization because they're now getting better customers. So it's customers being better satisfied, helps the organizational standing within the eyes of the employees themselves. CX is increasingly determined by the EX. So you take that a step further, you construct your EX to provide the right work environment for the employees to build outstanding CX. So, and then the final thing in that is, in the post-COVID world, our digital interactions are undergoing a significant shift in how customers engage employees at work. So the engagement between the two are much more digitally driven. So you have to have a good CX in order for those customers to engage appropriately with your employees. And they need a good experience as well on their side to ensure they're doing the same thing going in reverse. It's easy to capture data on a CX platform, but if there's no workflow behind it on the EX platform, the level of service does not go up. And that really, as a former Fed, I'll tell you, I hated going home at the end of the day thinking I didn't do my job well because of the tools that I had. Not because of my effort, but because of the tools in my hand. So I think it's very important to do that.
This is a fascinating path we're down. And let me just go down it a little further, because I think we hear about customer experience all the time and user experience, and it's really focused externally. But the fact that, as you so well put, the connection between customer experience and employee experience matters. If you feel good about what you've done and you see the results of what you've done, you feel better about your agency. Why is that connection not being made as often as maybe it should? Or, and maybe I'm making an assumption here, it is, we just don't see it.
Well, I think it's made mostly because digital transformations as a whole leave the people element out of it. There is so much to do in transforming federal IT. It's like eating that 800-pound elephant. That data tells us that the CX and the EX always come last. So we just haven't gotten there. It's how do I get a widget produced faster, not how do I help an employee or a customer connect faster. That's probably the first thing. Secondly, it's hard. It's hard to do both at the same time and understanding the needs of your customer. When technology is changing so fast and the consumer electronics side is just racing at light speed, we're always looking for the best solution rather than a good solution. I think we're letting perfect be the enemy of good in a lot of these cases, rather than just using industry standards and starting to build from that position. So I think it's just kind of that. It's not negligence. It's just so much to do. And I think sometimes folks just get vapor locked.
It feels like the pandemic, however, has refocused that citizen experience, that user experience, because so much moved online. You were forced out of the face-to-face meetings. You see this, for instance, at the Veterans Affairs Department with their telehealth, something like 12.5 million telehealth visits over the last year. You see places like the Social Security Administration, which you had to move all those meetings online, and they're starting to get back in person. Is it those agencies like the IRS you mentioned, like SSA, like VA, like some of those that have that everyday meeting with the citizens, with their customers, that's where this has to maybe start, and then it can kind of trickle, if you will, backwards into a place like maybe Commerce, who maybe doesn't have a everyday meeting with their clients, so they may argue that they do.
Yeah, I think it starts there. I think it starts with Customs and Border Patrol, or the State Department passports. I mean, anywhere there's a big workflow and there's direct citizen services that you could compare to, consumer services is where I'd start. So it should be easy for me to get a passport. I should be able to do most of that work and enter most of that data before even going to a passport office. And have an engagement tool where I can do, and all I do now is verify it. Similar to I do my TSA. I verify everything from my pre-check before I get to pre-check, and I just have to go show them the physical documents. So that's a system that actually works. Why can't we do that with other things and commodify that a little bit more?
Or even better, why not we just beg, borrow, and steal from each other and not reinvent the wheel? But that's a whole
that would be nirvana.
That's a whole different discussion.
Yeah, let's not get into cloud security.
That's for next show. I want to tag back to something we were talking about earlier that I think is also part of this. Is if you have a good customer experience, you have a good employee experience, you also don't have to deal with this re-recruiting as often, or re-recruiting becomes a little bit easier. And what these platforms and the data analysis can show us is when there potentially are going to be problems. It's very much like succession planning. We have a group of people who could leave soon because they're getting to be retirement age. They're you and me, Generation X, and maybe we're all going to retire early. How can agencies use this platform, the data, the analysis, to get ahead of the potential challenge?
Well, that's actually a very good question, and so I think that agencies could start to build their KSAs they need for certain leadership positions or certain highly desired positions where they have critical needs, and start building a knowledge base with real-time data on what their current staff looks like, what their ideal staff looks like, what skills they need, and start to monitor that. And going back to like the conversation we had about the listening posts, then those other leaders, those next level managers, are able to mentor and guide and direct folks into a direction they may want to go. One example is that if I want to build a CHARO at VA, what skills do I need for a CHARO at VA? And which of my current employees have those skills? How many of them have that skill? How do I get more people who have that skill or skill set? And do I even want to hire from within? Do I need external, talent? Are too many of my senior executives too long tenured in my agency? That's all kinds of data that we can pull in that we have at our disposal. I want to say that this is more military specific, but DMDC collects, the Defense Data Management Agency has over 1,000 data elements on people who are in the DoD, in personnel, just 1,000 personnel data elements. If we were able to get that data to the surface and start to figure out how to actually mine it, we could probably do a lot of things from a talent management perspective, because all the data we really need probably is resident somewhere in one of those systems.
That's kind of crazy, 1,000 different elements. And that's just, I know it's DoD, so everything's bigger there, right?
Yeah.
But I think you're right. That knowledge base, does this kind of tag also back to this idea of succession planning? I think I mentioned it earlier. A lot of agencies just aren't very good at this. It's very hard to do. It's time consuming. It's just not in the front of their mission. But I think what we've learned during the pandemic and just it kind of shined a brighter light on it is the people matter. And if you don't have the right people at the right time, you have a lot more trouble meeting mission.
Yeah, no, I think absolutely. I think succession planning is often overlooked, and I think it needs more attention. I think my background is in that, so it's kind of a passion of mine. So I'm a talent management geek. I think that there are a couple of different things that agencies need to take a look at going forward. One, what does your current workforce look like, and is it constructed for what you need it to do in the future? Two, do you have the capacity to train that workforce to be what you want it in the future? And do you have the time and the bandwidth? And three, where are your other pools of access to talent if you don't have them? Those are three big things the federal government can do today. But like you said earlier, it takes work. It is not something that you can just rubber stamp. And really, if you think about automation, that's the thing that we probably shouldn't automate. AI can assist it, but it should be one of those people kind of things. But if we can automate simple tasks, that's one of the hard tasks we want to put our brains to.
And that simple task can just be collecting that data. It can be putting that data in the right buckets or taking those 1,000 personnel data elements and understanding what the trends are among them, and then using your brain to go from there.
Absolutely.
Kevin, we're just about out of time. Before I let you go, what do you, from your perspective, what's the big takeaway from our conversation today? When you talk to your government clients, what's the message you want to make sure they get about this talent management, the care and feeding, the importance of their employees?
We're at an inflection point. COVID kind of drove the federal government to make some decisions faster, things that are probably coming, but they had to get there sooner. Don't go back. Don't go back. This is an inflection point. We have an opportunity to actually keep the pedal down and go. You've got to, like we talked about, you have two restive generations coming into the workforce. They're going to have different expectations. You've got Gen Xers like us who think we're technical. So, hey, we're willing to roll with it. So as we rise to more senior levels, use us and use the opportunity that COVID's provided to actually elevate your transformations and keep going.
And I think that inflection point is really key. We hear that time and again with technology, but I think it's a different type of inflection point where it's a people, it's a process, it's all of the above, not just one or the other.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Kevin, I very much enjoyed this conversation today. Unfortunately, we are out of time. So let me thank my guest. Kevin Brooks is the Principal Digital Strategist for DoD in the U.S. intelligence community at ServiceNow. Kevin, thank you so much for taking the time today.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. I enjoyed it.
I'm Jason Miller, and you've been listening to the discussion Innovation in Government, sponsored by Carahsoft on Federal News Network. For more on this discussion, visit federalnewsnetwork.com and search innovation.